all our foodies out there, welcome back for another episode of the Pittsburgh Foodies, a podcast where we'll explore the intersection of food and culture within the city of Pittsburgh. Last week, you got to hear from my friend Danae as she explored Oasis Farm and Fishery, a Black-owned and led one-of-a-kind urban biomarket garden located in Pittsburgh's Homewood neighborhood. If you haven't had the opportunity to listen to our previous episode, A Natural Menu, I highly recommend it. Danae interviews Tacumba Turner, Oasis Farm and Education Manager, who explains the wonders of urban farming and how it's made a positive impact on the Homewood community and the surrounding environmental state. For those of you who are new here, welcome! The Pittsburgh Foodies began alongside my friends Shruthi and Danae, starting as a project for our podcasting class with the goal of exploring different aspects of food and culture within the greater Pittsburgh area. We love learning about new places and foods to eat, so why not create a podcast to share our love of food with others? As Danae beautifully put it in last week's episode, food is one of the easiest ways to connect communities and bring individuals together, and that's exactly what this podcast aims to do. I'm Alexandra Slabakis, and I am so excited to be your host for today's episode as we venture off into the wonderful world of Greek culture and cuisine with Chris Balouris, a born and raised Pittsburgh native and Carnegie Mellon business grad. The Balouris family immigrated from Greece's island of Evia to Bellevue, Pittsburgh in 1957, where they opened the Bellevue restaurant that successfully operated for 38 years until 1995, and this is essentially where Chris grew up. He never intended to follow in his family's footsteps into the food industry, but his journey began in 2006 when he acquired Salonika Imports, a wholesaler and distributor of high-end Mediterranean culinary products specifically imported from Bulgaria, Spain, Turkey, and of course, Greece. Salonika's Imports wholesale and retail store is located in Pittsburgh's historic Strip District, offering key Greek products such as olive oil, olives, cheese, jarred spreads, and pasta. Such key ingredients are all being used at Evia, an authentic Greek restaurant Balouris recently opened a few blocks away from his parents' original restaurant in Bellevue. Evia is designed to feel authentic, as if you're transported on a vacation getaway to a cute little taverna on the island of Evia, with the menu ranging from absolutely iconic Greek dishes such as halloumi fries, gyros, and avgolemino that are all simple yet unique and have been passed down over generations in the Balouris family. The Evia menu aims to deliver classic Greek comfort food to those in Bellevue. Balouris aims to use Salonika Imports and Evia as a continued opportunity to teach others about Greek heritage, food, and culture, and I am so excited to welcome Chris onto the podcast to further discuss Greek culture and cuisine in the local Pittsburgh community. If you wouldn't mind just kind of telling the viewers just a bit about yourself and kind of, your early life and how you've kind of got to where you are now.
Sure. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh. My parents were both born in Greece. My dad is from the island of Evia, so we'll get to that later as we talk about the restaurant. My mother's from Peloponnesos, from the Yithion area. And my wife's parents are also from Greece too. So we have Greek blood. We have roots to Pittsburgh. And I had lived after college. I worked in Connecticut for about 10 years. And when I moved back to Pittsburgh, I was at a crossroads in my career and decided to make a jump. And this opportunity with Salonika Imports presented itself. And but I should also mention and rewind a little bit that I grew up in a restaurant family, like a lot of Greeks and a lot of immigrant Greeks when they came to the United States. My dad and uncles, when they came from Evia back in the 50s, they started a restaurant in the town of Bellevue, where my restaurant is currently located. So all the kids, all my cousins, everyone worked in the restaurant. I probably worked in it more than others, willingly or unwillingly. But I never thought I would be in the restaurant business. So that's kind of like the impetus of why we opened the restaurant, in addition to having the import and wholesale business that we do with Salonika Imports. So so anyway, when I moved back to Pittsburgh, I was working in corporate America, and I decided that this opportunity with Salonika Imports, having the entrepreneurial background, working in a family business, I always knew at some point I'd want to own my own business. Can't say that I knew what that looked like. So that after doing a lot of research, decided to buy this business that that had a nice base, and wanted to buy something that I thought I could build on, and which we have. So bought that in 2006. So owned it for about 16 years, my wife and I, and we're basically a regional importer and then food wholesaler and distributor. So tri-state area, Mid-Atlantic, Ohio, West Virginia, PA. A little bit in Baltimore, a little bit in Detroit. So if it's Greek, we have it. We do other cultures. We import from Turkey, Egypt, sometimes Morocco, a little bit from Spain, but Greek is definitely the focus. And, things like olives, olive oil, roasted red peppers, oregano, a lot of we import mostly non-perishable stuff, and sometimes some, dairy products like cheese, obviously. So we have that at our location. In our warehouse in Lawrenceville, which we've been based there for about 30 years. We have a small retail store in the front of the warehouse too that we sell to the public. So it's kind of like our test kitchen and our, if wholesale customers want to come in, but more and more, that's a business that continues to thrive and grow as more Americans become, it's crazy to say in 2022 that a lot of Americans don't use olive oil that much or are not familiar with it. Things that are, seem simple to folks with ethnic, especially Greek heritage. It's still not ingrained. So for me, that's a fun part of the education process, teaching about olives and olive oil and why the Mediterranean diet is based on the Greek diet. So that's kind of where that was the impetus. So been in business in Salonika. 2 years ago, we started Evia. It's a small restaurant, has 15 seats, but we were supposed to open pre-pandemic, and then we held off for 6 months because it was right at the start of the COVID. So we held off, and then we just said, okay, we got to open. And thankfully, it was we always wanted to be small and nimble. We wanted to do a lot of takeout, which it's definitely come to fruition. So the first year, we were takeout only. And we thrived from the beginning, and we figured out the whole takeout model. And then for about the last year, we've been, the dining room's open, but it's gone really well. So it's all the things that we import, we use at our restaurant, all our family recipes we use at the restaurant. And, I'd like to think that I know that people appreciate it, especially when that a lot of the Greeks and Greek Americans in Pittsburgh are going to the restaurant. And, when I see them at my other business or out and about, they have great reviews. So we're real happy about that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And definitely, you hit on a lot of questions that I was individually going to ask, which is perfect. And to kind of touch on your customer base, especially, in Pittsburgh, it's, in like having been born and raised in Pittsburgh, how do you think that, you yourself are connected with Evia and Salonika Imports, while living in Pittsburgh? Because yes, you're importing from Greece and Turkey and Bulgaria and all these places, but as you're traveling to Greece over the summer and you kind of bring that back into the restaurant, how do you feel that you're still connected to Greek culture while living in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, it's a great question. To give a little bit of background on it, also growing up in Pittsburgh, a lot of the restaurants back in the 50s, 60s, 70s were immigrant Greeks had owned them. Now, a lot of the restaurants that have a Greek flair, a lot of the gyro shops, they're not even owned by Greeks anymore, which there's no problem. But, a lot of the Greeks, like my generation, who had families that were involved in restaurants, didn't get into the restaurant business. And there's a few, and they do really well. But my wife and I felt that, just a small, Greek food, let's face it, it's not foam on a plate. It's not like, in general, it's not high gastronomy. It's seasonal, it's fresh, it's good quality, and what they do well. That's what I always appreciate when I go to Greece and, wherever we eat. So that's kind of like the concept we wanted to bring. Not pretentious, well priced, good ingredients, great quality olive oil and fetas and things like that, and not dumbing it down. And I also should say that when I growing up in Pittsburgh, there not a lot of Greek restaurants growing up. I mean, you have restaurants that might have some Greek items on the menu, but not specifically Greek. There's a few. And when I moved to Connecticut, I lived in Norwalk, Connecticut, which is southwestern Connecticut, and I loved it because all the restaurants were owned by family owned and operated. And I loved it. Pizza there was, everyone called it Greek pizza because all the Greeks owned all the pizzerias. So, and I'd go into Astoria, New York, and the Queens and the Brooklyn, and I really appreciated that. The Greek cuisine was a lot different than what it was in Western PA, specifically Pittsburgh. So I always had in the back of my head that it would be great to open a Greek restaurant, and not easy running a restaurant. And that's kind of the reason why we waited. But we felt the timing was right. And, like I said, when it's something small, nimble, but, really, family style, family recipes with great quality ingredients. So all that background of, my career path and, growing up, that kind of, how we got to where we were with the restaurant.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear, especially how it's all kind of culminated to this one particular point. And kind of talking about, the difference between Connecticut and how it's more family run and owned versus like Western PA, which is not as many, like Greek owners or just, the cultural owners themselves. How do you try to educate, new customers on like Greek cuisine and culture through,
Sure.
both?
The great thing about having Salonika Imports and having the experience of 16 years owning a food import and being a distributor, but dealing with wholesale customers, but also having the retail store kind of gave, our customers know that we had that experience and kind of gave us a little bit of cachet to say, we trust Chris and his family, that they know what they're talking about. They've been in business, they import good quality products, they've been selling to the public, have a reputation. And then, we know they go to Greece every year. They, we have family. My wife and kids stay for almost 2 months every year. And, we go visit our suppliers and, we're connected. And I think that gives people confidence that, hey, they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that connection that you specifically show with Greece as, a place and how you kind of bring it into the business is a big part, especially of what brings that authenticity. And I feel like, as a customer, it's really nice to hear that you're so connected, with, the Greek cuisine and the culture kind of, and bringing that and those elements into Pittsburgh, because like there's not that many places that remind me of like Greece and New York. So in terms of impact with the community, are there like any particular examples that you could give based on like interaction with customers and how you've seen that impact within the community of like Greek cuisine and culture?
Sure. The one that comes to mind really quickly is we supply a lot of the Greek food festivals in Pittsburgh. I think there's 14 Greek churches in the Western PA area, within, let's say, an hour from the city center of Pittsburgh. So we deal with a lot of Greeks, that's helps a way to spread the Greek culture a lot. So not only with the Greeks parts of that are part of those communities, but also their customers. So that's an easy way to spread the Greek culture. And, I like to tell anyone, Greek culture, a big part of it is food. You go to Greece, you don't have, whether they've known you for a minute or for 10 years, if you come to their home, you're going to be treated like, kings and queens. So that's kind of like what we try to give our customers experience at Salonika Imports in Lawrenceville, and then also at Evia. So I think it's just that, philoxenia, reaching out, that's a big part of the Greek cuisine and or the Greek culture, I should say. And I don't know if there's a direct translation of that word, philoxenia, but it's it's outreach, I guess. It's being warm and but food for us, that's an easy way to provide that.
Awesome. So just kind of continuing on the, narrative of like Greek food and kind of bringing it in, I was looking on your website and on Evia, and it was saying that one of the things that you do when you go to Greece is, you want to make sure that you're still on top of the culture and kind of the, food trends that are going on at the same time. And that has a big impact on the Evia menu. So the question would be like, do you enjoy discovering these new foods and these cultural traditions, bringing it back? And how does it affect the menu, especially with the restaurant?
For me, that's probably the most fun part of, the career path that I chose. I've always loved food. I've always been interested in food, especially Greek, but also Mediterranean. My wife and I, we've traveled to Spain and to France and to Portugal and in Turkey. And I love learning about different cultures. I love learning, once again, the common theme is learning about a culture. Greatest way is the biggest entree is food. And, I tell people, any country you go on a food tour. It's the easiest way to meet and connect with people. So for me, I love that aspect of it. And it keeps me, jazzed up every day when I go to work. I'm all constant. I drive my wife nuts because I'm always saying, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And I'm the idea guy. I'm not necessarily at the restaurant, the execution guy. So, you have to balance that in a business on what makes sense, what will sell, what ingredients are accessible that you can source, and get great costing on. So, all that comes together. But when we go to Greece, definitely, I go to the outdoor, food markets like key all the time. My kids, I drive them nuts, but hopefully they appreciate it at the end because I want to go as a family. I want them to experience it too. And, we'll go into, my in-laws live on the island of Crete in Hania, and we'll go up early in the morning. We'll just go into Hania and just walk around and, browse shops, eat at different places. And for me, it's fun, it's social. Food is great. But it's you always find something different, whether it's finding a different spice or a different type of cheese. And that's the thing, like we've tried at Salonika to, there's a lot of 2 or 3 standard types of cheeses that everyone sells here in the United States. And it's a lot of feta and different table cheeses. But for me, I'm always on the outlook for different type of artisanal cheese that may be popular in certain parts of Greece. And Greece is such a small country, but it has so many different variations, whether you're from the north, Thessaloniki, or you're all the way in Crete or whatever different islands. You would think everything's the same, and it's completely different. If you're close to the sea, different, cuisine, or if you're in the mountains, you're going to find different cuisine. So I love, traveling around Greece and figuring that out and experiencing.
Yeah, that sounds so exciting. And just to kind of hear how you try and incorporate all these different elements from Greece and kind of combine it all together is really special. So another question would kind of be what, in terms of the restaurant and just like culinary Mediterranean goods that you're selling at Salonika Imports seem to be the most favorite among the customers? Is it the more like typical Greek, like American items, like feta, or is it more like some kind of hidden Greek item like casseri or something like that?
Sure. It's a lot of those things. It's a mix, I would say. We have we import bulk olive oil from different parts of Greece, from Crete, who my in-laws cousin we buy from, or from Laconia, where we've imported from the same co-op and the same olive manufacturer for 30 years. We import from Spain. That bulk olive oil where someone can bring in their own bottle, where they can buy a bottle from us and they can taste before they buy. People love that. And it's part of the education process, because a lot of folks, will come in that aren't familiar. They're non-ethnic, not non-Greek, don't really have any ethnic background, but they want to eat healthy. They've heard about the Mediterranean diet. They're interested. And those are the folks that I love when they come in, because they're just a sponge and they just want to, absorb, how do the Greeks eat in Greece? Why is the Mediterranean diet popular? And olive oil is, probably a key component. And so that educating about olive oil is one thing I really like. That's definitely one of our best sellers. All the cheeses in general, folks not familiar, even with feta, a lot of Americans have only really tasted in their supermarket domestic cow's milk feta, which is good. But as Greeks, we think sheep's milk feta is superior, better flavor, better texture. Yeah. So educating about things like that. And then, there's a lot of Greek cheeses that have really long names. I joke with people, it's like, if you can say it fast 10 times, I'm going to give you a free pound of cheese. But
Yeah.
they would never walk up into a counter and say, "Hey, I want this cheese," because it's unfamiliar to them. So we try to educate them, and once they're hooked, and once we get a sample and they taste it and give them the story in the background, they definitely become repeat customers. One thing that we partnered up with a food tour company in Pittsburgh. It's called Berg Bits and Bites. They do a tour of Lawrenceville, and every Saturday bring anywhere from 10 to 30 people in every Saturday, and we give them a plate of meze, little feta or olive oil, and different things on the plate, and we talk about kind of what we're doing here, talk about Salonika, why we're in business, what benefit we give to them. And a lot of those folks may have never been to our part of the world or our business, but that's another way that we've pulled people in. So on that tour, we offer another item to answer your question in a long way. Was there's a roasted red pepper spread that it's Bulgarian based, and we had never when I bought the business, I didn't know anything about Bulgarian culture or food, and dips and spreads are a big part of them, bruschettas are a big part of their culture, but it's roasted red pepper based, but it's sweet and spicy, and people love it. So that ended up being a really pleasant surprise, and it's an item that we import directly, but it's something that it's great to say we're all Greek, but bringing those other different cultures in gives a different mix and makes us a little more unique than if you're going to go to your big box store or your supermarket just to buy your food. You've never experienced something like that. So I'm encouraged by every year more and more customers come in and that are inquisitive about ethnic food. So that's another reason why it's an interesting business that every morning I get up, it helps me be energized.
That's great. Well, it sounds extremely exciting just because you've touched a bit about not only of the interaction with the customers, but also how your family is heavily involved. It's like a family own and run business, and you're all kind of in it together. And I guess that on that kind of line of questioning, what has your experience been running both, these companies alongside your family?
For me, it's great. It helps. I grew up in a family business. All my cousins, all my siblings, we all worked at the restaurant. Like I said, willingly or unwillingly, sometimes kicking and screaming, but that's a family business. So I have 3 kids. They all work. My daughter's in college at Penn State. She does our social media. She does our monthly newsletter. So I've given them, ideas on what it's like to run a business. But it's the skills that I appreciate growing up. It's work ethic, customer service. It's things as simple as, my kids will work in the retail store and work the register. It's simple math. Each generation is different, but I hope to give them skills where, the customer interaction, social media is great, but as you may know, I find sometimes with the current generation, social skills may not be where I think they should be. So as a parent, I want them to look someone in the eye, simple skills that I think are very important. So, my whole family's involved. A lot of my nieces and nephews have worked at both businesses, and I'm not an easy person to work with sometimes as an Uncle Theo, but they always tell me after the fact that they appreciate it, and it's given them some skills. So the family togetherness, that's kind of like food with the Greeks. Families stick together, and when you run a family business, that it's a big part of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been incredibly great to listen to. And just kind of before we finish off, is there anything, any sort of advice or just anything else you'd like to say in general regarding, what we've been talking about to our listeners?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Going when I was at Carnegie Mellon, not in a million years that I think I would ever be back in the restaurant business or in a Greek-based business. It wasn't even part of my mindset. And, I'm thrilled that it's come full circle for me to go from the entrepreneurial route, owning my own business, being an importer, and then figuring out where can we take it from there, and, identifying an opportunity in the Pittsburgh market. So for me, it's been rewarding and gratifying, to make it a family business and, involve some of my family members too. It's been, once again, pretty gratifying. So couldn't be. I'm happy where things have ended up, but I never in a million years I would tell anyone who's in college or young people, sometimes your career path doesn't always go where you want it to go, but it's identifying the opportunity and just acting on it. So for me, it's worked out.
And that's a wrap. As this episode comes to an end, I want to say a huge thank you to Chris Balouris of Salonika Imports and Evia for an interview. If you ever have the chance, I highly recommend you continue to explore the different Greek dishes and Mediterranean goods your local neighborhood has to offer, not just in Pittsburgh. If you'd like more information on shopping or dining with Salonika Imports and Evia, please check out the link in the show notes for their website. And for more Pittsburgh Foodie podcasting updates, be sure to check out our blog. We hoped you enjoyed this episode, and this has been the Pittsburgh Foodies, and we hope to see you all soon.